everyone, welcome to Painting Crafty. If you're new here, my name is Melanie. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. And those who are returning, you make my heart happy when you grab your art supplies and join me in a little art fun just for yourself. Today we're going to be working on this delightful cuckoo clock. It's got a few little kitties on there. If you follow along with me, you know I love kitties. So I'm going to be walking you step by step of how to draw this. I'm going to break it down into steps that are easy to follow along. And then I'm going to be showing you some little mixed media steps, adding a little bit of colored pencil, using a simple watercolor techniques to add the little bit of detail that's on my drawing. But once you have it drawn, you can use whatever you like. So if you like acrylic paints, markers, gel pens, glitter pens, whatever makes your heart happy, use that to add the color. For those who might like to have some extra help drawing, I do have a subscription. It's on my Ko-fi page. It's rather like a Patreon page. And that's where I host my subscription for all of my line drawings that I do on YouTube. Or if you'd like to just support my page, I'd so love it if you did. I appreciate all those who come along and do so. Well, let's go ahead and start the drawing process. I'm going to show you the beginning steps. So let's take a look at what are some of the shapes that you would like to be drawing if you'd like to duplicate what I'm doing. Well, let's start with our shape. Let's take a look at what the cuckoo clock base is. It's this shape here. It's not a square, so it's going to go in a little ways. So let's start with our roof line. So our roof line is, and you know, I'm not good at my geometry shapes. Whatever this might be, I forget. I should have looked that up before I started doing the drawing. But if you figure you're going to, if I was going to draw a square, this is my square here. I have those two little triangle pieces that are going to come off to the side. So my roof is going to have like a gable end of like a house would. And then I'm going to start off here to the side and bring it on in this way. So I'm going to be going a little narrower as I come down. And then my base here, which is what my kitties are going to sit on, is a rectangle shape. So I'm just going to have this simple little rectangle shape here. And then I'm going to be curving it down a little bit just to give it a little bit of fanciness. Now, if you want to, you could draw a line right down the middle before you start drawing on your paper, so your items are a little bit more even on each side. That'll give you an idea of how to center it. So sometimes and often it's helpful to have some guidelines so you can draw a line down the middle. Now, when you're doing this part, it's all going to be lined up, half on one side, half on the other, and that's going to give your picture a little bit of symmetry. Now let's work a little bit on my kitties. Now when you're drawing and figuring out what size of cuckoo clock you might want to have, I'm drawing on a 6x6 piece of paper. This is a great size to, if you have a journal book that you like to keep all your drawings in, this is a good size to draw. If you like to frame it, this is a good size too. And hang them up. I suggest putting them up someplace on a bulletin board or a little special area that you might have. Hang them up for a while and enjoy them and see what you have done. And also notice your improvement as you go, because I can guarantee you the more you draw along with me, the better you're going to get. So if you're just starting, don't get too frustrated. You're just beginning. Drawing is not just for some, it's really for everyone. It's just a skill. So the more you practice it, the better you're going to get. So that's the deal, is just keep on practicing. Don't give up. You're going to get it. You're going to see improvement in what you're doing. So let's take a look at where my kitties are. Now, I'm going to be drawing these. Let's see if I can tell here how big, if I go down this way, 6x6, and if I do this about halfway through here, this would give you an idea of how big I drew my kitties. So my head is going to be above my center line. So if I come here, I know I'm going to be coming up. This is kind of like a ghost shape. If you think about it being rounded at the top, it's going to come around. This would be my head, and then we're just going to come down. So you think about that you're drawing little ghosts on each side. Just a long shape, a long little ghost on each side, but we're going to put some ears on it and muzzle and make it look like a kitty. So let's draw this one over here too. So this would be my other little ghost shape. Now take a look at where you ended this one. And you're going to kind of want to do it the same on this side so that each of your little shapes look similar to what you have on each side. It does help to draw the center part of the clock first, so then you know how much room you need for the clock center, and then put your cats on. So draw this little center of your clock and then put your cats on, or ghost. Ghosty cats. Now to do it, kitties got, they have little triangle ears, so they're going to be off to the side here. So we're going to have a little triangle here and a little triangle here. And then let's do it on the other side. I'm going to change my pencil. That lead is running out, so my pencil keeps on going back. Okay, so I have my little shapes like that. They're just small little triangles. I'm going to erase this and open it up so it's no longer closed to the head. I'm going to have that opened there. And now let's go ahead and add where the collars are going to be on our cats. This will help divide up our face. So I'm just going to do a smile face and a smile face there. And on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. So a smile face and a smile face. That's going to be where our neckline is of our cat and the collar line, and that's going to help divide that up. Now we can do a little bit more shaping on our heads if we would like. After we get our collar on, we could make this a little bit chubbier, like coming out a little ways, just to give our face a little bit more dimension. So we could add a little bit more chubbiness to each side if you'd like that look. That's what I did on this one. You can see how I kind of curved it in just a little bit here. My collar is set back just ever so slightly, and then the side comes out a little bit more. So I can erase this. I can come in, make my little side line, and do the same here, do a little side. So I can add a little bit more dimension to my body if I like to choose to do that. Now let's put the eyes in. We're going to just do simple little eyes. They're a little bit closer to the middle, and I'm going to pop that nose in, which is an upside down triangle. Put my eyes here, here. These are just very simple upside down triangle for my nose. And then we're going to put our muzzle in, which is down and up, down and up. So we're doing that upside down V with a little bit of smile on each side. Simple and easy. We're going to make these simple look like that. We're going to come over. This is what's going to give your little kitty character. So how you do these elements is going to affect how your cat's going to look at the end. Now for me, I usually pop in my whiskers at this point because often I forget to put them in. So I like to put just my whiskers in, usually about 3, just so I remember to put them in at the end. Now to do let's do the tails. Let's do the tails. So the tails are going to be here at the bottom. We're going to be having them located at the bottom, and this is just an S shape that's coming on each side to do a little bit of an S shape. So I'm going to start here and come up, do my S shape up and around, and then I'm going to double my line. So here we go. We're going to come up and around and follow it around. So I started at the bottom of my cat body, and then I put my next line up and followed around my shape. So I'm going to start down at the bottom, do that S shape, coming up and around, and then coming back and copying that same line I just drew to get my little tail on there. I wanted them to kind of be the same on each side, just to give that symmetry. When you think of a cuckoo clock, you think of things being the same on each side. So I kind of wanted to have that feel for this too. So I wanted to have them a little similar on each side. Now we have his little body done, his tail. Let's put in some legs. So we're going to be doing some very simple legs. This one here is the back leg. So it's going to have a little bit of an arch down and then a foot. We're going to have an extra leg here for facing us, so it's a little down line, just a tiny little foot. This little guy has an arm that's coming up, like he's pointing at that bird. So what I'm going to do here, I don't know if I'm going to have enough room on this side. I might have to do it on this one over here, the pointing up. So I'm going to be doing this curve around, so it's a little bit of a hook, or this will be like the hip of his back leg, come down, make a little round foot. There you go. And then this front one is just going to come down, do a little foot, long skinny, there we go. And if you need to put 2 legs in, like you don't have enough room for your hand to come up over here, you can add another one of these in. So come down, do a little foot, and then now you have your 2 legs in the front at least. Now this guy might be the one I have to have my arm up, and if that's the case, I'm going to just draw this arm coming up, and like it's pointing, his little paws pointing at something, and then coming down. Like that, simple and easy. And I'm going to do his hip on this side. So I'm going to do that hook shape again. So we're going to come around like a little hook, come down, and when we get close to the bottom, that's when we're going to make the little hump for our foot. Now, since one arm is up, I only need one other. So I'm going to come over here and just make a longer, skinnier leg that's in the front. So this one is just the opposite of what I drew. So look at your drawing, see how much room you have on each one. So maybe you need to change your kitties around too, or you could keep them the same the way that I drew mine originally. Now we do have this little bird item here. Now this is something I put on. You can choose whatever you would like to add to yours, but I can show you how I did mine. So I wanted to section off this part here so I'd have two different colors on my birdhouse as an option of colorations. I wanted it to be bright and playful. So to do the little bird, I just did a rounded head. Think of doing a check mark. We did a drawing earlier this week on Tuesday that had a little bird, and we kind of discussed the same shape. So we're thinking a little check mark. So it's going to curve around, come around, and then back up. So here is my check mark. I think I'm going to do it a little bit shorter, coming around, and I have my shape. And then when I come back this way, I'm going to come around down again. Whoops, there goes my pencil. I don't care for the lead on this pencil. It's kind of too weak. I don't like it. It breaks too easy. I'm in search for a new pencil. I like the size of the lead, but I don't like how strong it is. So let's curve around, come back down, and then to my point. There we go. It's kind of like a sideways comma mark if we think about it that way, or a sideways teardrop, or that check mark feel. And for the tail feathers today, I'm going to make 3 individual tail feathers on there. It gives me an opportunity to change the color of my bird. Now for his eye today, I gave him kind of a human eye, which means it's almond shape, up and down, up and down. You might hear some thunder out there. It's thundering today here in Minnesota. And I'm going to do just a simple little eye. So it's more of like a human eye because it's got that little peak on each side, but it gives it some character. Now where I drew my eye, I'm going to come from the middle and draw a line here. And my beak is going to be on each side of that line. That way it's centered up with my eye. My eye is going to be in this middle part here and then drawn straight out for a line to draw my beak. Now to do the little top part, I just did little stylized balls to give him a little bit of interest. Little lines coming up, little balls on the top, just to give it a little interest. And then his little legs are coming down here. He's going to be standing on a shelf, so I'm going to come a little lower than my color line, and I'm going to create another rectangle underneath here to give him something to stand on. And then I'm going to be doing this little decorative piece that comes across here. This is going to give me an opportunity to change up some of my color and have a variety of colors there. So it's going to give my eye something very interesting to look at, not only different shapes, but different colors throughout my picture. I have it pretty much laid out. Now these are just little decorative elements that are down below here. They're just going to hang off of my little cuckoo. These are little fish that are on there. To do a little fish, all you're going to be doing is, I started with my tails first. So I came out with my little tail, something like that. And then I just curved them around and then came back in. Kind of like a flattened out heart shape is what you could say. And then I did my body. So I come out into a point, out into a point. And to divide off the color space, I just made a sad face shape at the end of his head. You can do a little eye, you can do a little smile face, whatever makes you happy. And then I did a fin down below and a fin on top. And that's how I did this other one too. Simply done. And I just made them different heights and staggered them. I decided to put some hearts in there. You could change up whatever you would like to do for your shapes. Oh, and I did put a little bit of a chimney because it looked like the house, so I wanted to add a little bit of a chimney space in there. And that's basically the basics of what I drew and how I drew it. And again, for those who would like to come over to my Ko-fi page and join my subscription, I would love to have you there. I like having a reference as well, and so I'm thinking that many people would like to have a line reference as well as when you're drawing. It's fine to use a line reference to get your ideas and have it there available. I also include a color copy of the one I did. So if you'd like some ideas of how to do your colors, that is also sent along with your line drawing. So it's a great, easy to find, easy to join, and very reasonably priced as well. Well, let's go ahead and start the watercolor steps. So I'm going to be showing you that next step. I'm going to be using just a simple set of watercolors. This one here, it's just very much a student grade watercolor color. I'm a firm believer, just spend a tiny bit more money on your watercolor paper and just buy the watercolors that you can afford. And quite honestly, when I first started out, I used the washable Crayola markers. All you have to do is make a little patch of your color on a hard surface, add some water to that patch, and voila, you have watercolor. So just use what you have. Use a simple brush. You don't need a watercolor brush. You don't need any fancy watercolors. When you're first beginning, it's just learning about how does watercolor work? How do the layers work? It's different than acrylic painting. So let's begin this journey of the watercolor, and I will show you the steps of how to begin. A little bit uniqueness about watercolor. It does have to do a little bit of advanced planning for your colors when you first start. So often I will swatch out my colors to decide what colors I want to use. Watercolor isn't as easy to change as acrylic painting. So if you do a little bit of planning beforehand, you might have a little bit more success on choosing your colors that way. So I knew I wanted to keep in this color family. So I'm choosing pink greens, a goldenish green, and this turquoise blue with a little bit of red. So I started there with my watercolors. The other item I wanted to try out in this is my colored pencils. So I used this brand here, the Uli brand, Pastels, to be able to do a little bit of my background. And the reason why I chose the colored pencils this time versus a marker is because I wanted it to be very subtle in my background, but I still wanted it to be a detail that would show up. So that's why I chose to use the colored pencils this time versus like a stronger accent like be a gel pen or a glitter pen. Those make beautiful lines, but they're going to be a little bit more strong in your background, and I wanted a very soft look. So that is why I chose those. Now let's go ahead and start doing our watercolor. So when you first start doing watercolor, if you're new to it, you're definitely going to want to do a color chart of whatever watercolors you're using because they look so different in the pan than they do on paper. This is super helpful. It's going to be able to allow you to look at your watercolors and figure out what color you would like to use. Let's change this around so you can see mostly the drawing and you won't be seeing me this time around. All right, I'm going to start with my lightest colors and then work my way dark. That's how watercolor works. I did do a little bit of pen work, micron pen work first, but I just wanted to be able to kind of place my eyes a little bit and do some of the writing before I started. It's totally optional, but the micron pen I used was the 01 is what I used. Micron pen is going to be a permanent permanent pen. When you use it, it won't slide around with once you put water on it. Now this one is just going to be my first layer of pink. I'm going to be doing this all over my roof line because I do want to have that stronger feeling of pink. Watercolor is going to dry slightly lighter as it dries. It's just the opposite of what acrylic paint is. Acrylic paint dries slightly darker. This is going to dry slightly lighter. So I'm going to start with a pink. Now that I have my first color on, wherever it's wet, watercolor wants to flow. So I want to choose an area that's not going to be next to my wet area. So I'm going to come down and work a little bit on my clock. So I'm going to add the pink around the outside of my clock, and in the center I'm going to be changing the color. When I'm designing these or working on these, I like to take the colors I'm using and spread them out throughout my drawing. So my painting, if I do pink up here, if I have some here and I have it in a different area, it's going to give my drawing and painting a really cohesive look. So no matter what, any color you're using, you might want to look at yours and then take a look and see where can you travel and carry out your colors to give your painting a cohesive look. I'm going to just put my little pink on. Since I have it out, I'm going to be using it and adding those little pink areas in. Let's take a little bit more pink and add it over here. These steps now that I'm pretty much going to be showing you is going to be wet paint on a dry surface. Mixing my colors to tea consistency. That's a good consistency to start with your first colors. So I'm going to be using a little bit of tea consistency to be able to start with. I'm going to be working on this area here since the top part has had enough time to dry. I'm using a Canson watercolor paper, which it's not 100% cotton at all. So it's going to dry a little bit faster than if I was using 100% cotton paper. The Canson brand is one of my favorites to use. It's considered a student grade, but I can really get a good result. I've been using it for quite a long time now, and it never fails me. It does a great job. And plus, it's not so expensive that you feel like you have to do that it's so precious that you can't go ahead and experiment and try and use your watercolors. It's important to do that practicing. So use the materials that you won't feel like it's too precious, and you can go ahead and practice and see how your watercolor works together with your paper and your water and your watercolors. That part's dry. I'm going to come right underneath here now and add this green. So I'm going to carry on with my colors. Now I'm at that point where I can most likely speed some of these areas up and pop in and out and explain things as I'm going. So I'm going to go ahead and speed some of this film up. I'm going to be just doing similar technique in each area. I'm just going to be laying down a single layer of color in areas and letting them dry, and then coming back on and adding more layers. When you're putting these layers in, you think about that you are painting the shadows when you're painting watercolor. So this would be your lightest, brightest color is your first layer, and then you're going to be adding the shadows on next. So as you layer your colors, you're going to be deepening them, and think about where there might be a shadow. So naturally, where the edges might be darker, underneath something like here would be a darker area. Perhaps around your cat would be a little darker. So think about those shadow areas of where you're going to be adding your darker colors. Now, if you need to dry your paper a little bit, you can do that. If you run out of a space where you're going to be able to put your colors, you can take a little bit of a hair dryer or even like a heat tool and dry your areas before you continue on. Give yourself some time for those areas to dry. You'll be much happier and your colors aren't going to run into each other. I'm going to streak in another color of pink, just a little darker color, and I'm going to be going across my roof line because that's the direction that my shingle like detail is drawn. So I want to use that same idea of when I'm pulling my brush across. And on this layer, I'm not looking to cover up everything I already put on, because remember that first layer is going to be my highlights and this is going to be my darker color. On these very small areas, you really want to control the water, not have a lot of water on your brush. It's going to be mostly pigment, and by really controlling the water, you're going to have more control over where your paint goes. If you have too much water on that brush, you're going to have your color flood your area and it won't stay put to where you want it. So often when I do these little steps, I'm just taking a pretty damp, well, not a damp, but a dry brush with just a little bit of moisture in there, and then I'm using it right out of my paint pan and then going up and adding the color where I want it. I'll have more control by doing it that way. I keep a paper towel in my hand so I can go ahead and tap the extra water off. I can also check my colors to see where I am before I place them down on my paper. It's just a great little practice to get in the habit of doing, is to tapping and wiping your brush off before you were to lay it down on your paper. So in my kitties, when I'm doing the next layer of darkness, I want to think about where would my highlights be, where would my dark areas be, and putting that color on. So again, I'm not wanting to cover up everything I just put on originally, but I'm going to be adding to my layers and adding that next layer of contrast into my little painting. Now while my kitties are still wet, a little bit damp, I'm going to pick up a little bit of that orange color that I just used on them, and I'm going to be adding a little bit of a brown color to it to add just a little bit of a tiger stripe to it. So I'm going to add a little bit of orange, and then I'm going to be picking up a red brown, mixing a little bit in there so I can get kind of a little bit more of a rusty color. And while my colors are still wet, I'm going to be adding a little bit of that dark to my cat. Take clean water and I'm going to go over my background surface first. So I'm going to wet my paper and then put my background color back on. What this is going to do by doing that is I have a less chance of getting too dark too quick because my paper will already be wet. So I'm adding it on. Now I'm not looking for puddles. I just want kind of a soft watercolor or a water sheen to my background. Get my words out there, right? Is what I'm looking for. So I can tell my paper is wet, but I don't have a lot of puddles on there. Now I can go ahead and pick up my color and then lay that color in. I'm going to get just kind of a nice subtle background by doing it that way. I would also have the opportunity to darken it a little bit if I needed to and lighten it as well. Now these colors are still pretty fresh, so I don't want to spend a ton of time scrubbing next to them. I don't want to lift my color in any way. I want that to stay on there. So I'm going to scoot kind of fast and carry my color throughout. Now when I apply my color, I'm fine with having a random background, meaning that I have some white showing through there. I'm fine with that. I like that whimsical look of being uneven when I create my backgrounds. I am still kind of keeping it more linear up and down, but I can switch my brush direction and create a little pattern that way. But again, I'm trying to keep my color as soft as I can so I can have a nice contrast. But I do want to have some unevenness in my color too. I don't want it to all be the same. But I think it's super cute. Now when you get done with yours, make sure you sign them. Find a clever little spot. I think I'm going to do my name. Maybe I will do my little name right here along this tail. I like to sign in pencil, and I always joke it's because if I do it wrong, I can change it, but often I do write my name. When I write my name, I don't really care for it, so I can have an opportunity to erase it if I like. But I do like that look of having my name right there instead of your typical spot of being at the bottom. Let's change this up a little bit. Find my camera angles here. Well, that is it, my friends, for tonight in my drawings. Oh, you know what? I forgot to add. Let's go ahead and add the micron pen in there. I cannot believe I forgot it on that one. Well, I can show you the differences. So here's the one with the micron pen accents on the end, and here's one that doesn't have it on there. So they still have a nice look. They just look slightly different. And check what the clock face looks like so you can center up yours as well too. And then put it on there. You got to write kind of small to get it in there, but it's fun to do. Now, if you'd like to share yours, because I always believe that it doesn't have to look like mine to look good. We all have different ways that we like to draw things. We all have different ideas, and I encourage you to share yours. I do have a Facebook page, Painting Crafty, and on there you'll see a post for this drawing. Share yours underneath there. I love to share your work too because you encourage others to try, and you also show that there's many different ways to draw this drawing. Well, thank you so much for joining in. If you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I'd so appreciate it. If you're new to my page and you found value here and you'd like to subscribe, I'd love to have new creative friends join me. And also, if you'd want to, ring that bell because YouTube will send you a notification when I have a new video up. Well, thanks for joining in, and I'm so glad that you brought your art materials, joined in today, and created something just for yourself.